very important question what I'm going to cover for you people. So very important, the most frequently asked question for the interview room. What is the difference between string and a string buffer? What is the difference between string and a string buffer? Do you know, repeatedly asked question for the interview room. What is the difference? What is the difference between string and a string buffer? Repeatedly asked question, of course. If you attend some 5 interviews, at least 2 to 3 interview rooms, yes, this question is by default common. What is the difference between string and a string buffer? Very common question for the interview room. So very common answer. What is the difference between string and string buffer? Very common answer. String objects are immutable. String buffer objects are mutable. Immediately interview person may ask, what is immutability or what is mutability? Can you explain with an example? Okay, this is, if this type of question is there in the interview room, how you can able to answer right? Okay, this is, suppose if I am taking string S is equal to new string of Durga. String S is equal to new string of Durga. Okay. S dot concat of software, like I am taking S dot concat of software. Now system.out.println of S. Here if you observe, string S is equal to new string of Durga, S dot concat of software and the SOP of S. The same thing if I can take string buffer SB is equal to new string buffer of Durga. String buffer SB is equal to new string buffer of Durga. SB dot append of software I am taking. SB dot append of software. System.out.println of SB is nothing but like. Can you tell what is the answer in the first case and what is the answer in the second case? In the first case, yes, what is the answer? Can I get Durga or Durga software? Durga software. But in the second case, what is the answer? Durga or Durga software. So that's what you have to identify the difference between string and string buffer. Once we created a string object, we can't perform any changes in the existing object. By mistake, if we are trying to change. Okay, this is because string objects are immutable. Immutable means non-changeable. We can't change. Once we created a string object, we can't perform any changes in that object. Suppose string S is equal to new string of Durga. Okay, this is, yes, we are creating Durga string object. Once we created a string object, we can't perform any changes in the existing object. If we are trying to perform any change, with those changes, a new object will be created. In the existing object, we can't perform any change. Okay, this is. So, S dot concat of software. I am adding software to S. S is nothing but what? Durga. Okay, this is. With that change, a new object by default will be created. Durga software, right? And this result, we are not assigning to any reference variable. That's why this object by default eligible for garbage collection, right? Okay, this is. So, SOP of yes. Yes still pointing to Durga only. So, the output is Durga but not Durga software. Is it clear for all of you, right? Okay, this is. So, once we created a string object, we can't perform any changes in the existing object. By mistake, if we are trying to perform any changes, with those changes a new object is going to create, this behavior is nothing but immutability of the string objects, right? Okay, this immutable means non-changeable. Okay, this. Suppose if we consider string buffer SB is equal to new string buffer of Durga. Okay, now observe SB pointing to Durga. Once we created a string buffer object, we can perform any type of changes in the existing object. Any change in the existing object, because string buffer objects are changeable, mutable. Okay, this is SB dot append of software. Now software will be appended in the existing object only. So SOP of SB. Then what is the answer? By default we are going to get Durga software, right? Are you getting? So the most valuable point, especially for the exam, certification exam, and even for the interviews also. Okay, this is once we created string object, we can't perform any changes in the existing object. This behavior, this non-changeable behavior is nothing but immutability. Once we created a string buffer object, we can perform any type of changes. Yes, sir, this changeable behavior is nothing but mutability, right? Okay, this is. So explain difference between string and string buffer with an example is nothing but like we should be in a position to explain. Is it clear for all of you, right? So better to take side by side both. Take side by side both. So take clearly. First take this part and then take this part, because I will give some notes here. That's why better to give the space. Take clearly the most valuable question, especially for the interview room. What is the difference between string and a string buffer? Or explain immutability, mutability with an example. We should be in a position to explain. Take clearly. Completed, right? Okay. Now add the theory below the first half. Add the theory. So what is the difference between string and string buffer? Very common question, very common answer you have to tell. String objects are immutable, string buffer objects are mutable, right? So once we create a string object, we can't perform any changes in the existing object. If we are trying to perform any change, with those changes a new object will be created. This non-changeable nature is nothing but immutability, right? Once we created a string buffer object, we can perform any type of changes in the existing object. This changeable behavior is nothing but what? Mutability of the string buffer object, right? I hope it's clear for all of you, right? Okay, that's all.